Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that change is inevitable and we no longer need to go to work to work. As a workplace dynamic strategist and the founder of Community, I draw back the curtains on my own business, the clients and projects that we deliver, along with tapping into the knowledge and insights from academics, business leaders and champions of change. I believe that our environments have the power to positively influence our behaviour and performance, inspiring our human potential. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Work Life by Design. Now, I hope you are looking after yourself as we are nearing the end of the year, and what a year it has been. One of the things that I have observed a lot lately is there is still this very much this ongoing conversation around the workplace. Is the office dead? What does our new workplace look like? How do we bring people back into the workplace? And it's very much a conversation that I'm having a lot with my clients at the moment. So whether that's existing clients, prospective clients, old clients who are coming back and going, okay, what can we do to refresh, renew? How do we relook at our space and make sure that it is actually still performing the way that we need it to? But the bigger thing that's happening there is that the needs of the organisations have shifted. The way that our people are working has shifted. And there's a bit of a debate that I'm seeing going in social media at the moment, and perhaps this is just because of the world that I work in, but, you know, are we trying too hard to recreate the home at work? And what does that look like? You know, what does our workplace actually need to do to support our people and how they need to work? And how can we create a better experience for our people in the workplace? What does that need to look like? How do we use our office space to really elevate that whole experience of work for them? Unfortunately, there is no quick and easy answer to this, and it's also very nuanced and highly specific to each and every organisation. I present whole keynotes on this. I do senior leadership workshops. I work with teams. I've even got a whole strategic consultancy that dives in and really explores this in great detail. So there's a lot of moving parts that go into this, but what I can tell you is that it really comes down to the employee experience, and it's around connecting the organisation's desire of what their employee experience is for their people, and how can we then embed that at every touch point through that space to really ensure that we are communicating that to our people in every turn that they have when they're coming into that space. And as a strategist, my whole job is about embedding that into the physical environment. So, you know, we talk about employee experience and what that means, but I see it as having three layers when it comes to looking at how employee experience shows up in the workplace. And those three layers are really around what an employee's experience is in terms of working with your company. And that might be the way that typically we understand employee experience. It's the journey that an employee takes in working within your organization. So it's that whole life cycle from attracting them to retaining them to seeing them depart the organization. And it's what is that experience that we want to create for each and every employee in our organization. Now, Gallup have a beautiful model that I really like, because what it does is it talks about that life cycle. So they talk about it in terms of attract, hire, onboard, engage, perform, develop, and then depart. But overlapping that, so what they've got sitting across the top is that they talk about the purpose, the brand, and the culture of the organisation is feeding down into that model. And what's feeding up into that model is the strategic workforce planning. Now, as a strategist, part of my role is to help understand and unpack what that purpose is, what is that brand, what is that culture that you have and you desire for your organisation. How are we then embedding that into the physical space, and how are we then informing the strategic workforce planning that then goes back up into that employee life cycle? So that's really probably the most common way that we think about employee experience, is that life cycle of the employee. But when it comes to the workplace, this is where I think the second layer of employee experience starts to come in. And it's really what is an employee's experience of the physical workplace environment. So that's everything that they see, they hear, they touch, they smell. What is it that they feel when they're coming in and experiencing your environment? What is the journey that they're taking as they go through the space? What are the connections that they're making? How are they behaving? How are they feeling? Why is it that they're actually coming in? What is this space offering me that I can't get anywhere else? And the way that I like to think about it is that it comes down to three ways when we're talking about this second layer. And it's really about connecting into the hearts, the bodies, and the minds of our employees. Now, when I'm talking about the heart of your employees, I'm talking about the culture. And this is the piece that comes down to understanding, how do we establish belonging? How do we feel like we're really connecting into that collective emotion that exists in an organization? And we're leveraging that so that we're creating this sense of togetherness, this whole idea of connection. And it's really about how we're aligning to the purpose and to the values of the organization and our people and finding those shared stories. And when I look at it from a workplace perspective, what it's really looking at is how are we taking that brand experience and how are we then bringing it to life. So every organization has a very unique brand experience. It's the DNA, it's the fingerprint, it's something that only your organization owns. And so when we can connect into that, we're really connecting into that emotional state, that heart state of our employees. And that's one big part of the way that I see our employee experience coming together in our physical environment. The second part of that is around the body. And the body is really about how we go about embedding those emotional objectives from our hearts into that physical space. It's the physical interaction that we have. It's that sensory journey. And as I said, it's the things that we feel, the things that we touch, we see, we smell, we hear. All of those sensations that we experience as we walk through a space. All of those things that we feel. It's about how a room actually responds to its user. How does it flex? How does it adapt? How does it move and actually enable our people to perform and to work in our space? And our bodies are also a lot about how we influence our behavior, and we use our environments to then guide that behavior. So we do that through flow. So what is the sequence of activities that we want people to do as they move through a space? We do that through zoning, and that's about bringing together similar types of behaviors into different zones. So if we want people to be noisy and collaborative, or we want them to be really individual and quiet, it's about bringing together those zones so that we are enabling those behaviors to happen in like-minded energy states within different pockets of our spaces. And the last thing is around our spaces. How are we using our furniture and the physical cues that we're seeing to guide people to behave in a particular way? Enjoying the episode? I would love it if you would share this show with just one person who you think it would inspire. Just one. The more we can share the insights of what it takes to make work work, the closer we are to elevating everyone's experience of work. So that brings us to the last part of this collective physical experience that we're talking about in terms of the heart, the body, and the mind. And our minds are really the technology that enable it all. It's the thing that makes this all completely possible. If we think about technology, it's about how we are plugging ourselves in, how we're connecting into our organization. It's how we can contribute and how we can share our ideas. And what it comes down to is this network of connectivity between people and place. It's how we can start to continuously build on the thoughts and ideas of our colleagues by infusing them into this central database that comes within our organizations. And technology is also about enhancing our whole experience of work. It's about reducing friction. It's about making our lives easier, enabling things to move smoother, more quickly, and for us to get into that state of flow where things just happen and it's really effortless. Now, one way that starts to happen is through the use of automation. So if we think about the way that automation works, automation is there to reduce steps for us to actually have to do when we are looking at a system or a process that we need to complete within our work. Within a task that we have to do, there are a number of steps that need to be completed. And with each one of those steps, what's happening is we are increasing our cognitive load because we are keeping open loops. So every time there's something that needs to be done, our brain opens a new little tab and that open loop is created. What automation is doing is it's removing some of those steps in the process, which means that it's actually starting to close some of those loops for us. And so with reduced number of loops open, we're actually reducing our cognitive load. That enables us to spend more mental energy on the things that matter because some of those simpler, more redundant tasks are being removed through automation. And that happens in two ways. So we can have it through the technology and how it actually enables us to do our physical work, the tasks and activities that we need to do to perform our job. However, it can also be used to make our interaction within our space so much easier. And one prime example of that right now is how we engage with technology, how we communicate with our colleagues, both in real life within our workplace environments and those that are virtually working from home. How do we seamlessly connect our devices? How do we bring those people in easily? How do we continue to collaborate and connect with them when we're both physically together, but also when we are remote as well? And so that's just one example of how automation can start to reduce that cognitive load, and that's about the mind. So it's really about thinking, how do we bring these three elements together? So how do we bring the heart, that collective emotion of the organization? Then we're talking about the body, which is the physical representation of it all, and then the technology through the mind that makes all of it possible. How do we bring those three elements together to ensure that what we are creating is a very aligned, it's a very prescriptive, and it's a responsive environment that is cohesive and reflective of the brand experience that you want your people to have when they are working in your organization. Now, that brings me to my third point in terms of those layers of employee experience within an organization. And the third one is all about your employees' experience of change. Now, we've all been through an incredible amount of change over the last few years with everything that's happened. The way that we're working is very different. The way that our organizations are responding, the flux and the speed at which technology is actually evolving. All of these things are having a huge impact on our experience of change and our experience of work. It's also how we transition them from that one space to another, because typically when we're creating a new workplace environment, it's very different to the work environment that they have come from. It no longer operates the same. It no longer has the same spaces. It doesn't have the same facilities. It's usually got a lot more opportunity for different ways of working. There's a lot more choice. And with that requires education. Our people need to understand how they can engage with that space. And we've done some great things, the team and I at Community, and how we've done this with other clients. We've gone through change management processes. We've brought in and we've worked with external change managers. But one great example that I can share with you, and I'll pop this link into the show notes as well, is when we were working with SEQ Water, we actually created an onboarding video for their whole team. It explained the design philosophy that sat behind the entire workplace design process and what each of the zones were for, what each of the spaces did, how the furniture was to be utilised. And it also had an ergonomic layer as well so that they could support their people in actually understanding what the appropriate physical behaviours were when using those different spaces. So having that great level of support and actually enabling your people to understand why change is happening, how it's happening, what's next, and then how they are to engage with that new space and that next level of change, that's all really critical in setting your space up for success, because people are creatures of habit. If we don't explain and share with them our new intentions for that space, we'll just revert to old behaviours. And our new space will never actually succeed in the way that we need it to. So there's a whole nother layer there that needs to be considered when we're bringing people through on these change journeys. Now, I dive so much more deeper into all of this in my upcoming book, The Next Workplace, and we explore how all of these elements actually feed into our experience of work, and we cover everything from the brand to the culture to the values, our behaviours, the element that well-being actually plays. And we also look at employee experience on such a broader scale, because there is so much more to employee experience in the slight little bit that we've touched on today. We talk about demographics, personality profiling, neurodiversity, all of the other elements that make us unique as individuals and how we want to work, because the way that I want to work is going to be very different to the way that you wish to work. And it's about ensuring that we're capturing and, providing spaces that support all those little different nuances, but in a way that then also responds to the requirements and the needs of our organization. And the thing is, as organizations, as business leaders, we are all in the business of curating our employee experiences. We are responsible for ensuring that that whole space comes together and reflects what we need as a business, but also supports the needs of our employees to be able to perform. And as a strategist, my whole job is to talk about how they then experience that space. How do we bring that experience to life? Through that brand, through that purpose, through the culture, because these are all the foundational needs that we need to be looking at to enable and support that. My whole role is to translate all of those objectives that contribute to your strategic workforce planning so that we can create an aligned environment that really enables your people to perform. We want to be curating those spaces and really encouraging those moments that matter. How do we create the spaces that enable people to connect? How do we enable that space to really elevate everyone's experience of work? Because when we do that, what we're really doing is connecting into the heart, the body, and the mind of your people. And that is what it is all about when we're looking at creating and elevating that whole experience of work. Now, as you can see, it is a very complex conversation. There is no one size fits all, and it is going to be very unique to your business. As I said, it is that fingerprint, it's your DNA. And the way that we need to go about that is going to be very different from one organization to another. And it is a complex conversation, and it's one that I'm really enjoying having at the moment. So if that's a conversation that you want to explore as well, feel free to get in touch. I'll drop a link in the show notes. You can jump on and book a discovery call with me, and we can just chat through what your options are, and we can talk about how you can start to really leverage your work environment to start to create and communicate that next level of employee experience that you want for your people. Whether you are a past client, a prospective client, whatever your particular slant is, these are things that are changing, and they're changing quite rapidly. And our business strategies are changing, and our whole desire for what we want to create our workplaces to be is changing. So my door is open. I would love to have a conversation with you and see how we can elevate that experience of work for your business and for your people, and start thinking about what does 2023 look like for your organisation, and how can you start to make it the best yet for your people. So until next week, I'll see you then.